Hello, figments of my imagination. Well, the finale of Stranger Things was pretty lackluster. I've been preparing a final statement I wanted to make, but this isn't that. Ever since it aired, I've had this nagging sensation that something just isn't right. It doesn't add up. So I present the cope theory. I wanted to start this off by saying I fully expect to be wrong, but I really hope that I'm right, which is why I'm calling it the cope theory, a very fitting name, honestly. The idea is that some, or possibly all, of Season 5 was a vision induced by the Mindflayer. The parties saw themselves winning, blowing up the bridge, and making it out. Well, except for Callie and 11. But maybe 11 actually did survive? Isn't that great? Frankly, no. It's incredibly boring and predictable. 2 words I would have never used to describe Stranger Things before this season. But I found myself repeating those words a lot ever since Volume 2 dropped. I'm going to explain everything I've noticed, so if you want to skip all of that and just hear the theory, jump to the time on the screen now. For everyone else, I want to start with the errors. The different color on the power switch at the squawk is a big one, since mismatched colors is literally the way Holly's able to escape. Speaking of the squawk, the real-life equivalent went off air at 11 p.m. on January 1st with a pretty interesting final message from the hosts. I'll play the whole thing here, but if you've already heard it or just don't care, skip ahead.
Vance, friends don't lie, and I won't either. This really is the end of WSQK.
Hawkins, we both wanted to say a few final words before WSQK powers down. Why don't you go first, Mindflayer? I need a second to just get it together. Now's not the time, chicken.
Well, Hawkins, I want to start by thanking you. Yes, you. Tuned in right now, listening to WSQK The Squawk. Whether you've been cranking the songs up in your parents' basement, blasting them loud on your boombox while riding your bikes around town, or just singing along to all the hits in your car, Hawkins, it's been a blast. Oh, and you're not listening alone. You never were. Every voice, every song, every moment on this frequency traveled outward, spreading, connecting, becoming something larger. We really took over this town, didn't we? The studio is just where WSQK started from. Tonight, WSQK comes to a close. And for one last time, I've been your queen at the controls, Mindflayer. And Hawkins, you never know. I might just be back one day. Oh, Vance, make sure you close the gate on the way out of the radio station, huh? You are so bad, always leaving it open.
Yeah, sorry about that. Mindy, that was absolutely perfect. It was almost like you took the words right out of my mouth and my brain. But Hawkins, what a curiosity voyage we've been on together. In a moment, WSQK will fall silent, but Hawkins, that doesn't mean it's gone, just that it's somewhere else now. Some advice for you, Hawkins, before we go our separate ways. Keep chasing those dreams. Live life to the full, because every breath you take is precious. So be wild. Go running up those hills. When your friend asks you to go out and you're thinking, should I stay? Should I go? Just go. Because your life is a never-ending story of adventure. But when your world goes a bit upside down, just know that your friends will be there to pick you back up. And they will be there time after time. You see, Hawkins, time doesn't stop when the squawk ends. Every song you heard is still there. Every moment you stayed when you could have turned away, still there. So when WSQK disappears, don't be afraid of the quiet. Sit with it. Listen to it. It knows you better than you think. The clock is counting down to 11 on New Year's Day here on WSQK.
Our time is up, Vince. Hawkins, it's time to go.
Hawkins, it's been a privilege to keep you company for what feels like a lifetime, but then in some ways only feels like 6 weeks.
Yeah, you're right, Vance. It really doesn't feel that long at all, does it?
This is Vance Goodman.
And I'm Mindflayer.
Signing off on WSQK, The Squawk. Goodbye, Hawkins.
For those that don't know, the hosts are named Mindflayer, an obvious callback to the Mindflayer, and Vance Goodman, an anagram of Vecna. The station had been running since November 24th and has offered up hints and clues about the final season the entire time, including a secret message that revealed the Volume 2 trailer a day early. So while it's possible that the goodbye messages mean nothing, I think it's not very likely. Mindy's message is very Mindflayer coded, talking about connecting and spreading everywhere and taking over the town. Vance, on the other hand, name drops a bunch of song titles and lyrics, possibly as a clue that the party needs to wake up from Vecna's curse. But enough about the radio. Do we have any other clues beyond all the inconsistencies that I've already talked about in my pre-finale video? Well, we have the end credits. Why is Will an illusionist? The sorcerer class wasn't introduced until 2000, but other magic classes existed, like the wizard. Why is Vecna missing his eye in the credits? That never happened in the show. And if it's supposed to mirror the D&D version of Vecna, why does he still have both of his hands? Why are the only shots from the last season 11 jumping at the Mindflayer and Lucas holding Max in the hospital? Every other season had more representation. And the final shot, with the D&D style player's manual for Stranger Things, has a d20 showing 7. Now, that's probably a nod to episode 1 of season 1, where Will tells Mike he rolled a 7, so the demo got him. But it could also have another meaning, like maybe it has something to do with Netflix's big January 7th announcement. Netflix dropped a trailer on the 25th teasing these announcements, and it does remind me a lot of Stranger Things. To be fair, obviously Stranger Things is one of their biggest properties, so of course they're going to lean into it, but still, the main series is supposed to be wrapped up. Why include it in the trailer? Oh, and the Stranger Things puzzled crossover ends on the same day. We also have that dragon painting, but maybe it isn't a dragon. Apparently there's a popular homebrew D&D monster called a false hydra, a monster that hides in plain sight and sings to make people forget it exists, causing memory gaps. Sounds a lot like what was happening with Birthday Gate and Joyce forgetting Will's age. And of course, there are the interviews. I've been looking through them and it just doesn't add up. After the finale, we have the interviews with the Duffer brothers where they say the ending they had planned was one final D&D game, which in my opinion isn't exactly having the ending planned, that's more having the epilogue planned or the final shot. They also were asked about conspiracy theories that Netflix forced cuts, and they said no. But of course they would have to say that either way, as Netflix certainly would have them under NDA. But the most egregious thing to me in the after finale interviews was their insistence that they are not subtle. I mean, we have an entire series that contradicts that, but okay. They also said they went into filming the finale by starting with the last 30 or 40 minutes, because in their own words, nothing that came before that would matter. Currently, that would mean that only the epilogue mattered, not the final climactic battle, not the journey, nothing. Alternatively, the last 40 minutes could be the only thing that matters if everything else was a Mindflayer-induced trance. And I've talked about the issues with the first 7 episodes, but what about the ones in the finale? Like the complete lack of Demogorgons in the Abyss? Or the escape plan involving driving straight through the military base, knowing that they're looking for L? Or Will not being affected while the entire group wailed on both the Mindflayer and Vecna? Or, frankly, how easy it was to defeat the Mindflayer in its solid form. Honestly, if that thing made it to our world, the army would have blown it up in seconds based on how the fight went in the Abyss. And if that was really supposed to be the Mindflayer, where did the particles that left Holly and the other kids go? And why did a random soldier know Mike's name? At 50:38 left, the subtitles say Dustin said it, but it clearly is not Dustin's voice. There's no way the soldiers would know who he is. And the epilogue. Right away, we see a copy of What's It in Hopper's cabin. And Jonathan is recording Will, Hop, and Joyce with a video camera, despite his rabid obsession with photography. He's also apparently going to NYU to study film when, again, his focus was always on photography. To me, it feels like someone is working on partial information. They know Jonathan is obsessed with cameras, but default to video rather than photo. Robin is also wearing very odd clothes considering her usual fashion sense. There's also no real mention of Vicky, which sort of leans into the idea that this illusion is someone else's Vecna curse, since most of the characters don't know that Robin is gay still. The ring Hop uses to propose to Joyce appears to be the same one Jonathan unproposed to Nancy with, which should have been destroyed in the Upside Down. Then in the D&D scene, we see another copy of What's It. This one in particular is odd because in episode 2, when Holly's thrown into her bookshelf, another copy of What's It falls on her. Really, I mean, how many copies of a conveniently named board game does one family need? Frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if you told me one of these blurry images in the background of Mike's room was yet another copy. Oh, and for some reason the military just moved on. No investigating Will or any of the party, not even any consequences for all the personnel killed. Just poof, military gone. Very odd. Speaking of, the whole driving through the base scene at the end of episode 7 was incredibly off as well. For some reason, none of the trained soldiers could hit a shot on anyone in the truck, and the party didn't just use Elle or Callie to either neutralize everyone quickly or completely hide their entrance. The whole thing seemed incredibly cheesy, like a bad 80s action flick more than the gritty, reality-grounded nature of Stranger Things. I'm sure there's more that I've missed, but outside of the actual show, we also have some odd posts on social media. The Stranger Things Instagram account posted some photos of the crew revisiting the Wheeler house. In them, the background has some anomalies. In the photo with just Max and Lucas, the board games in the back are Score 4 and Upwards has a little white box on the left with the Milton Bradley branding. In the second image, though, with the full cast, the first game is Core 4 instead, and that could hold extra significance since Core frequently refers to another collection. So in this case, Core 4 could be Volume 4, another little subtle background hint. And Upwards doesn't have the white square. A few of the actors have also been posting random images from production on their own Instagrams, but I can't tell if there's anything connecting them. So what am I getting at here? Well, I think my final theory basically still stands. I was just wrong about the timeline. This wasn't the real ending. We're going to get either another episode or edited versions of the episodes we already have. At this point, I'm leaning towards a new episode over edits. It'll probably start with some or all of the party being rescued from the hive mind, and end with the realization that the ethereal Mindflayer can't really be beaten in any traditional sense, so they'll have to settle on killing Vecna and collapsing the bridge, leaving the Mindflayer trapped in its own dimension. So let's talk timing. That's a giant question mark, but my assumption would be they don't want to delay it too long, so it should be this month. The way I see it, there are 5 possible dates: the 5th, 7th, 11th, 12th, or 31st. The 5th would be 12 days after Volume 2 premiered, if you count the 25th as the first day. It also happens to be the date of the Netflix WWE Stranger Things crossover. I doubt this is the one, but it's possible. The 7th is the Netflix announcement date, so it could make sense. It's also a week after Volume 3, so the timing works. And there is that 7 on the D20 in the credits. This is the one I'm personally leaning towards. The 11th and the 12th are both just because of the importance of those numbers in the series. Again, heavy doubt, but I do think they're possible. Finally, the 31st. This one is actually based on the radio farewell. While Vance is talking, the clock chimes 31 times. Now, that's probably a stretch, but this is the only meaning I could think of for the clock. Plus, this date lets me sweat for the entire month. Love that for me. And that's it. Honestly, I don't even care if they do it at this point. The theorizing has been more fun than the show ever could be. But I hope they do, because what we currently have is very boring, especially for a series as deep as Stranger Things. Anyways, do YouTube stuff below. Tell me how delusional I am, or whatever. I mean, I know I sound crazy at this point, but feel free to reinforce that thought, and I'll see you all eventually. Maybe this time with some non-Stranger Things content.